I think it was very valid criticism last year that you draft the quarterback first overall and then you didn't support him, especially at the line of scrimmage. From guard to guard, you really just had a mess on your hands. So I thought it was a mistake on their behalf not to have a better solution on the interior of their offensive line. You know, you already have a quarterback who has no history of playing in structure. He comes from an environment where and he won a Heisman playing, Superman. So now you're going to bring him into the National Football League where playing that way 17 games a year isn't really going to work consistently. So you have to support him as he gets used to playing within the structure of an NFL offense, and they didn't do it. So, I thought that it was valid criticism last year. I think they got wise this year.
How much credit does Ryan Poles deserve?
I think in a fair assessment, there is a lot that he has done that has worked well this year. The offensive line has been rebuilt. Now, did you create your own mess? Yes, but you also are then entrusted to clean it up. Joe Thuney is going to be a Hall of Famer. Drew Dolman is having a really good year. Jonah Jackson's playing the way I think that they had hoped he would play and the way he played at times in Detroit. Obviously, the coaching staff that Ben Johnson put together is somehow Dan Rochar has connected with Darnell Wright. He's playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level right now. You look across the board, I think Rome's a fantastic player. He was one of his draft picks. Obviously, Caleb. I think, we can question why you went to tight end and wide receiver in your first pick and your second-round pick. We can have that discussion, but the players themselves, I think, are fantastic players. There's a huge miss on the defensive line across the board. That can't be dismissed. So I think that there's a lot that has been good, but there are still, some holes there. Very few GMs don't have holes.
Right.
There's very few perfect guys out there. So I think that, this year has been Ben Johnson. It starts with Ben, and I don't think Ben is here without Kevin Warren, to be honest with you.
That's what I was going to say, too. And I'm giving Poles more credit. I also think I don't think he's the best GM. He still has to win me over, but he does. If we're going to yell the stat 15-36 or 15-37 for the first few years, then he gets credit for 6-3.
Sure.
But I've always said this, even when I would be really mad at the Bears, and I would always yell at you and Cap and J Hood. I'd say it starts at the top. And I think the Ben Johnson hiring is a great example for that. Like, sure, Poles identified him, and Poles gets credit for that. That is on the good Poles ledger. But that doesn't go down unless the up top ownership and the president look at business differently, and they want to get in with the big spenders for coaches.
Well, that's where Kevin Warren steps in, and
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that Kevin Warren is the one that went through all of the film and all of the stuff and said, hey, it's got to be Ben Johnson. But I think what Kevin did was he convinced ownership that, listen, we got to start swimming in the deep end of the pool. And financially, we have the resources, the assets worth, approximately $8 to $10 billion. We have to start acting that way. So there's no price that's too hefty when it comes to bringing in the right coach. So, I think it started the year before when they fired Matt Eberflus in the middle of the season,
Right.
Something else that they hadn't been comfortable with doing in the past. So I think it starts with Kevin's approach. I'm not telling you Kevin's a football guy. What I'm telling you is as the president of the organization, he's changed the way that they've done business. Now it's up to the general manager and the head coach to formulate, the right stuff on the field. But yeah, I mean, you definitely give the general manager credit for the head coach.
Poles identified Ben Johnson was his guy.
Yes.
And just like I've told you past stories, these past Bears stories from years and years ago, I always would tell the story of where the Mark Hatley, director, VP, I forget if he was director of player personnel or VP of player personnel. He wasn't the general manager in title. He wanted to trade up and draft LaDainian Tomlinson. And Ted Phillips said, no, the signing bonus is too much. It's too high. So the GM identified the right guy. They wouldn't greenlight it. So here, your general manager identifies the coach, the must-have coach, and ownership and the president greenlights it. This is where it's always more than just the general manager. You have to have ownership on board and the president, whoever's running the team, on board to greenlight these things.
Look, I think it was very valid criticism last year that you draft the quarterback first overall and then you didn't support him, especially at the line of scrimmage. From guard to guard, you really just had a mess on your hands. So I thought it was a mistake on their behalf not to have a better solution on the interior of their offensive line. You know, you already have a quarterback who has no history of playing in structure. He comes from an environment where and he won a Heisman playing, Superman. So now you're going to bring him into the National Football League where playing that way 17 games a year isn't really going to work consistently. So you have to support him as he gets used to playing within the structure of an NFL offense, and they didn't do it. So, I thought that it was valid criticism last year. I think they got wise this year, and I think that they made some really good decisions. I think Tooney was traded for a fourth round pick.
It's a great trade.
I mean, Dahlman was just money. Jonah Jackson was also a nice trade that they made. So
it beats trading for Feeney and Bates.
Yeah. So you gotta give him credit. Now you flip it around and you look at a Dangbo.
Yeah.
It hasn't been great. You look at, Grady Jarrett brings a lot to your locker room, but the production on the field hasn't been great so far.
None of your left tackle guys in that race are even starting.
No, I mean,
it's
I said,
the undrafted guys.
There's going to be mistakes that are going to be made. We looked at Tremaine Edmonds as a huge mistake in free agency. Now you're getting the best out of Tremaine Edmonds because you've put together a competent coaching staff that is using him correctly. That's a subtle move by most casual football fans. Oh, what do you mean you moved him from Mike to Will? Big deal. Oh, really? Like, look what they did.
Could play more aggressive.
Eberflus did this. DA's doing this, and Edmonds is playing at a Pro Bowl caliber, and when TJ Edwards is healthy, he's still doing all that he does. So coaching matters in this league.
Another good one is looking at the Darnell Wright draft pick. We've hammered him for the Jalen Carter thing, especially at 9. I always understood why they didn't want to draft him at 1, and they traded back. But at 9, when the number 1 prospect is there, now maybe it's a better thing. But now coaching has made Darnell Wright look like the player they wanted him to be, and it doesn't look as egregious now. Yeah. Let's go to some of these phone calls. 312-332-3776. Tom in Hinsdale on line 3. You're on ESPN 1000. What's up, Tommy?
How you doing?
We're great.
All right. Well, here's my thought on this whole thing. While you're absolutely correct, the upper echelon does the initial work. Polls does the film work, does the work that helps identify in collaboration with the head coach individuals that you want. But where I think most of the credit goes is to the coach, because the coach has to take what they see in film and on paper and transform that into a winning program. And I think Ben Johnson has done that. And it started when, as you say, the upper echelon has picked, they went after Ben Johnson. They did what they had to do to get him because they felt that he could do that. He has proven that so far. But think of the conversation we'd be having right now if the Bears were 3-7 and they weren't playing very well. What would you say then? So I do give a lot, if not most of the credit to Ben Johnson and what he's been able to transform our players into.
For sure. I think we all look at why the Bears are 6-3 on the football field to Ben Johnson, his culture, the way he's coaching, the way he's developing, his other coaches. There was a good Antoine Randall L story. Charlie, there's a little long, I think it's a good time, though, to play it, about how he enables some of the other coaches we've talked a lot about this year. These guys have been there and done that as former players, too, like Antoine Randall L., like Eric Bieniemy, like Al Harris. Two of the three were great NFL players. And this was Ben Johnson talking about Antoine Randall L., delivering that message about it's a known thing now. Rome was just talking about this the other day. Like, now they know how to win, and Ben Johnson talks about the evolution of that.
What is how do you define living in the known? Because it's something that a lot of players are uttering to us when they talk about these games and the opportunities they've had.
Yeah, I can't take credit for that because really Antoine Randall is such an integral part of what we're doing. Really, the entire coaching staff is doing a phenomenal job. They really are, and yet L's got an opportunity each week on Fridays to come up and talk with the team in the team meeting, and that's something he kind of struck on a few weeks ago, and it's really started to carry through for us, where he's talking about you start with this hope going into the season, and then you start pulling away with some of these wins, and you start believing in what we're doing and the progress that we're making as a team, and then you get the next step is knowing what's going to happen next. And so it's really, I think he's been the one behind that movement. I'm glad the guys have really resonated with what he's said. It's kind of the vision of this coaching staff. You bring in all these guys with so many different experiences, from playing at this level to coaching here for a long time, and I think each and every one of them has had a profound impact on our team.
He's got guys who bring the juice.
I think Antoine speaks to them every Friday. I think is what he
that's
said,
what he said,
because he's, what is he, the assistant head coach? So he gets to speak to the group on Fridays. So, I mean, listen, you have a semantics argument about who gets what credit for whatever. You're going to naturally give the general manager credit for hiring the head coach. I think I would say this, the head coach has been the most impactful guy in the building.
Yeah, it's a good way
in
to
terms of what is happening on the field. Like, again, we could have the argument, he's not here unless Kevin Warren forces ownership to change the way they see running their football team. So it's a domino effect, but there's no question the 2025 season, in my opinion, has been most affected outside players by their head coach,
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah.